Hi, my name is Austin Merrill, and I've chosen to do my presentation on Harry Markopolos, the whistleblower who blew the whistle on Bernie Madoff. I'm going to go over the pursuit that Harry went on, which started as a quest for knowledge and understanding about the investments, turned into a quest for truth, the steps he took in order to blow the whistle, and what happened after he blew the whistle, how no one paid attention. Now, Harry was initially tasked with understanding and knowing what Bernie was doing to be so successful regardless of the markets. He was then asked to duplicate that recipe so that his company could yield the same results. When he came to the conclusion that this wasn't adding up, it led him down a different path, a path that was a pursuit of truth and understanding of what possibly could have been a fraud. So Harry began essentially stalking Bernie Madoff's firm, looking at everything to better understand what he was doing. And in the end, he came to a conclusion that there was fraud, and it was either front-running stocks or a Ponzi scheme. And one of them might provide some sort of a monetary value if he were to blow a whistle, but not likely. He was likely not to get any money. However, he was going to attract a lot of attention. These are things that took all the incentives away from an outside perspective. However, it was the right thing to do. It's the ethical thing to do that Harry felt needed to be done. And so he first communicated with his friend at the SEC in the local branch, got the information of how to go about reporting to the jurisdiction that Bernie was in. He spoke at great length, I'm sure, with his wife, and she was in the industry, so understood his frustrations and perhaps what he had stumbled onto. He eventually took it to the jurisdiction that Bernie Madoff was in and reported it, sent all the information he had found, and warned them. And he eventually even escalated it to the director. There was no ethics board because he wasn't reporting it for someone in his own company. However, he did have someone he could report it to in the industry that regulates this. And he wasn't in Bernie's company, but he was in the industry and eventually left that industry. So he had gone through pretty much every correct step that you would go through in order to blow the whistle. It was particularly difficult because he wasn't blowing the whistle on a company he worked for. He didn't have the concrete evidence that a lot of people do have. He only had what was available and was able to piece together the information. But he felt it was strong evidence. And when he had reported all this, perhaps one of the reasons the SEC didn't listen too much is because he was a competitor to Bernie Madoff. And he didn't have Bernie's ledgers, but he did have good, solid information. And knowing all this, Harry still pursued it and knew he couldn't let up. It was a wrong that needed to be made right. And even in the end, he recognized he didn't even catch Bernie. They didn't act in his behalf based on what he had brought him to catch Bernie. They simply had Bernie turn himself in. It was Bernie's conscience. And all they could do is look back after the fact to determine, oh, he was right. But Hank pursued this anyway because he knew that it was right. And he even knew that he was going to face a world and a life that he had no interest in, bringing much unwanted attention. The results were not positive, and he probably even knew that they weren't going to be what you might think is heroic. But he still pursued it because it's what needed to be done. He was able to expose a weakness in a system. The SEC's relationship with Bernie, Bernie's relationship with investors, and conflicts of interest that arose. And all these things made for a big potential and a big possibility for fraud to exist, the largest fraud in history. And as stated earlier, he didn't catch Bernie, but he did expose the weaknesses in the system. And he didn't discover Bernie's recipe for success. He discovered the recipe for disaster. And he did it by pursuing facts. allowing those facts to take him down the path he needed to go, and just simply finding it one after the other without a preconceived notion. And he did it all because it was what was right, and it just had to be right.